digging in, particularly for women, to their mother-daughter issues pays off exponentially. You get dividends in all aspects.
Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. It's Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And today I have another amazing and special guest joining me today, Katherine Fabrizio. But what I like to do, Katherine, is have you introduce yourself to my audience, like who you are, what it is you do, and then we are going to rock and roll, as I like to say.
Okay, super. So my name is Katherine Fabrizio. I am a psychotherapist of probably 35 plus years. Gosh, that sounds like a long time. And maybe more importantly, I'm a daughter. I'm a recovering or recovered good daughter. And I have grown daughters.
So
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So like you have grown daughters, right? And
Ew.
so like I know my audience is wondering, and I know you'll get into it, but they're gonna want, like, what do you mean recovering good daughter? So go ahead and tell your story. Let's dive into it. You go back as far as you like, because what I like to do, Katherine, is have you share your story with the challenges that you have gone through that got you, let's say, from point A to point B, that led you to psychotherapy, to write your book, and how you help others today. So take it away.
And maybe it should help if I define the good daughter syndrome.
Yes.
Because that's what I'll come back to.
Okay.
So if you're empathetic, sensitive, and attuned, and you're raised by a mother who is difficult, that encompasses a lot. Maybe she's critical, manipulative, emotionally immature, insecure. So if you're raised by such a mother, you adapt and accommodate to mom's limitations, particularly if you're empathic and sensitive, in such a way that it molds the relationship to where when you're an adult daughter, you are preoccupied with mom's approval, mom's judgment. You want to make sure that mom's okay. So mom becomes the center of your emotional life. So you're good in that you're subservient, you are submissive. So the opposite of good isn't bad. It's independent, differentiated.
Excuse me.
You're your own woman. And
Right.
I love the name of your podcast because it takes being fearless to attain happiness, to break away, whether or not you actually go no contact, which I think is probably pretty rare, rarely needed in that. But you need to be fearless to set the boundaries, and we'll get into all that. So the way that I came upon this, I was in my early 30s. I just graduated from graduate school in clinical psychology and was starting my practice with my mother. There's a caveat. She was a psychologist. And I had two beautiful girls. I had a lovely husband. I had everything that I thought I wanted in life.
Right.
But I was paralyzed with depression and anxiety. And I had no idea what was wrong. The dynamic between me and my mother, which I thought was perfectly normal. Remember, this is 35 years ago.
Right.
There wasn't the internet. There wasn't the availability. Like a narcissist was a braggadocious man in most clinicians' mind.
Right.
Rarely were women diagnosed with that condition. So I had no idea why. I would cry at the drop of a hat. I couldn't make decisions. I didn't know what I wanted. but I could tell in a nanosecond if mom was okay and okay with me. So she was at the center of my emotional life. So, like so many good daughters, being good was very important to me,
Right.
being compliant. So I thought mom knew best. I should do whatever mom said to do. Um, and she had plenty to say about
Right.
almost. And I hope your male listeners maybe can listen in. I could say a lot about this, but lots of them reach out to me because they're married to a good daughter. And if you're in
Right.
that situation, there are three people in a marriage, and that's one person. So many times for men, it's the mother-in-law that's like, I don't know, always weighing in on how to raise the kids. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't buy a house without consulting with my mother. And to be fair, she was a very smart, accomplished person. So it made sense to me. But what I didn't realize and came to realize over lots of therapy, receiving and giving, was that I didn't have time or the emotional space to become my own person. And for many reasons, that kind of dampens a person's sense of autonomy, um, sense of just getting stuff done.
Right.
If you're always trying to chase somebody else's approval and it's never good enough, I should add that
Right.
because it's difficult. Mothers kind of move the goalpost because in order for them to stay relevant, they need to do that's the dynamic. That you're never quite, finished. It's like you never quite grown.
Right.
Yeah.
But
And
that's like being a people pleaser, right? But as a
definitely.
daughter, right, where you're not happy unless everyone around you is happy and they give you your like pat on the back, like you're doing great. Like, 'cause I was a big people pleaser for so many years, right?
Yeah.
And like when you're telling me this, like I'm thinking of your mother, and this something that was carried on from her mother? Like, was it?
Yeah. It was multi-determined. Part of it was cultural. We were Southerners, and good daughters obey and honor their mothers. So mom had that dynamic with her mother. And so it was very much expected, but it was also, I would say she had narcissistic traits and borderline traits. And so she had a lot of trauma in her life. So to make up for, I know you probably had other guests talk about narcissism. You want me to
Mhm.
say that
Yeah,
for
go ahead. No, go ahead
a
and
little
explain
bit?
that so my audience gets a good idea of what you're
Okay.
talking about.
Yeah, kind of a thumbnail. I like to talk about it in terms of the core wounding. So, a narcissist's core wound is that they feel a lot of self loathing and shame. And so, in order to not feel that, they
Right.
need to feel special and right and superior. So, I think it's so important when you're dealing with somebody and they're in your life to understand what's driving them, not to excuse the behavior, but to kind of know what you're dealing with.
Right.
You're like, if my mother is never, she always has to be right and she's never sorry. She can't ever apologize. It's kind of a red flag. Um, Someone who's borderline has been abandoned early in life, most likely, and their core wound is they're going to be left.
Right.
Well, and the trajectory of development is if you're the mom, you're working yourself out of a job.
Right.
So the healthy trajectory is to pull away, individuate, as we say in psychology, and differentiate, become your own person. And if mom's interfering with that over and over and over again because she needs to be special or she can't let her daughter go, and I know we're talking about a lot of people
Right.
because she gets triggered. So if she has borderline traits, she's going to become very reactive to these very normal and necessary like pulling away.
Right.
And that certainly happened throughout my childhood.
Well, you said it though, right? In the South, it's very, I mean,
Very prim.
and you see the movies portray it, right? Where like mothers and daughters are very prim and proper when they're out, even with their families, right? And the daughter should always be as they portray like obeying mother and
Yes.
doing what mom says to like the T, right? And right, and first, because I'm a clinical psychologist or major, I went for school for my bachelor's in clinical psychology. So I'm listening to you and I go, oh yeah, I remember that. Um, but what I was going to ask you is,
Yeah.
it's tough, right? Because they don't, and now, like you said, because that was 35 years ago and a long time ago, right? They only thought men were narcissists, at least.
That was, yeah, generally accepted. You just
Right.
didn't think about women.
Right.
Yeah.
Because some of the professors said, for a long time, they just ignored women. They didn't, it was like a man thing, right? Because everybody thought, but there are women narcissists out there.
Well, and the thing is, these days, there are a lot of covert or inverse or vulnerable narcissists that are women because women have, they know how they're supposed to act socially.
Right.
So lots of times you rarely will see the braggadocious, self-involved, flash. I mean, you will, mom.
Right.
I would say 80% of the time, you're going to see them micromanaging, very polite in public. She might be the head of the PTA. She teaches Sunday school, but behind closed doors, she's ruthless with her daughter because her sense of specialness is sometimes transferred to the daughter.
Right.
So she becomes the micromanager, like the stage mothers we were talking about,
Right.
um, and kind of lives through. She's reading her daughter's text messages, she's listening in on phone calls, she's choosing her daughter's friends. I mean, there's a lot of that, and confuses daughters because everybody wants to feel like your parent loves you, right?
Right. Right.
And I mean, they do in their own way, but it's really more to feed the mother's narcissism, the mother's sense of specialness, than it is to enable the daughter to do what she needs to do to eventually go out on her own.
Right. And it
So
sounds like, from what I'm listening to you, that the mothers will make that very difficult for the daughters to like actually break free and be their own person.
totally. See, these moms, I mean, a client will come in and they'll say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but you don't know my mom. I can't stand
I
her.
bet you hear that a lot, right? I
I've
get
heard
it, but
that a lot.
you've never met my mom, right?
You've never met this particular brand. I
Right.
said, in 35 years, chances are I actually have. And I
Um,
don't expect her to be flashy and making pronouncements like kind of a stereotypical male narcissist. I don't
right.
expect her to be that. But oh, the manipulations and the passive aggressive and the mixed messages, like, you're not going to wear that, are you? Or that's great, you got a promotion, but who's going to watch those kids all day? You're going to have to put them in daycare.
Right.
Uh,
You said it though. And what I've seen, right, in my studies and what I do as a counselor, right, substance abuse, like I've seen
yeah,
where you're right. It's weird how the men are more out there, like they don't
yeah,
care, right? Like, yes, I'm a narcissist. There's nothing you're gonna do about it. Where the women, like you said, are covert, like they do it when no one's watching. Is
it's
that
yeah.
correct?
I think so because they're aware of how they're coming across, and it's tough. And sometimes it's reinforcing the culture to be big and bold,
Right.
and so I think some men can feel like, I mean, that's okay and that's admired. But most women know that's not going to be admired. And then culturally, women are, I mean, it's a broad sweep that
Right.
your product is your child. So they feel very justified in
And
um,
being that way.
micromanaging, and I'm just
Right.
doing it for your own good.
All right.
Or
Like the
nobody knows
famous
you, your mother.
like the famous spanking. This is gonna hurt me worse than it is gonna hurt you. And you just look at them like, I doubt it.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But growing up like that had to be tough, right? Like constantly feeling under the microscope that you're not doing this right or you're not doing that right or whatever the case. Is that what led you to become a clinical psychologist, a therapist?
I kind of followed in my mother's footsteps, so that's interesting.
Right.
Um, and she was confusing, as a lot of moms are. Sometimes she would overly praise me. And then other times, then the doubts would come in and the criticisms would come in and, oh, you can be anything you want to be. You're so wonderful. And I used to be in performance. I was a singer but then she would give me notes and she would nitpick about everything. So it messes with you. So, and this is very typical. I'm sorry, but I think women are worse at it. Men
Right.
just are more direct usually. You
Right.
know, you, you know what you're dealing with. But like I said, over time, it really caused me to be depressed. I went into psychotherapy, figured it out, and we were in practice together, as I said. And I'll never forget the day I walked into the office that we shared, and I said, Mom, I've got to leave home. I'm leaving the practice. And I knew it would break her heart, but staying would break me.
Right.
It was one of those, left or right kind of moments. I'd love to say that that's all I ever had to do, but that's not true.
Right.
It had to be renegotiated. We lived in the same town and she was in touch with the grandchildren. And I would say, she never liked it, but she learned to respect it. And there's several points that I really like to get across to daughters, that your mom may never give you permission or her approval to individuate and have your own life. As a matter of fact, she's probably going to fight you tooth and nail, but you have power that you don't know that you have. And when you start to exercise it, she's going to recognize it. And now moms go, one of two ways. Most of them will say, if this is the only way I can be in your life, I'm going to take this over nothing,
Right.
you know? And then if you stand up to one of these difficult moms and you say, look, I'm my own person, I'm going to call the shots in my life.
Right.
Some of them say, well, I just can't tolerate that. And then, it kind of takes the level of contact kind of takes care of itself. People feel like they have to lead with, let me read everything about narcissism, figure out who mom is. And then if she checks all the boxes, I've got to tell her I can't see you ever again. And then sometimes that's fine and needed, I would
Right.
say. I can talk more about the difference between an impossible mom and a difficult mom.
Right. Right.
Um, but that's why I love the title of your podcast. When you can, feel the fear and do it anyway,
Right.
stand up, deal with the pushback. Bullies back down, don't they?
Absolutely. And that doesn't matter if it's family or out in the world, right? It's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's how we find our way, right? When we, like you said, stand up, we become our own person, right? And God bless your mom and your dad and everybody, right? Because I mean, they wanted the best for you, but like you said, I wonder, when you're telling me this story and I'm listening about your mom, like as she's going through school to learn all this stuff that we do,
Yep.
I wonder if she said, "That's me." Oh no, that's me, right? And like you said, there's certain things you do with that, like my brother-in-law, for instance, who's autistic, right? Like they they have to have it their way, like, and it's not because
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
selfish, right? It's just right food, certain textures don't sit well
Uh-huh.
with them, or they just, and they don't, and they're, autistic children and people don't have empathy like we do, right? So until they get the answer they want, they're gonna bug you until, but which is all right, as you learn. So how did you learn with mom, right? When you came to that point, how is your relationship? How has it bloomed since then? Or
Can tell you. So we had less contact, I would say. I will have lunch with you once every couple of weeks. What was helpful about that, it was in public, there was a time limit. And she did she did back off. I think at that time she got married.
Okay.
So, and that's also another kind of uncomfortable dynamic when you're partnered and your mom who's really close isn't. But sometimes, when I said, no, you're not involved in the marriage, she went and found somebody for herself. And I don't want to paint, a big happy picture, but we learned how to coexist very well together, such that she's passed. She got dementia.
Okay.
And I hear from a lot of my clients who have elderly moms. With my sister, I was able to orchestrate her care, and I held her hand on the day she died. And actually, as a dementia patient, she was actually very sweet. So she kind of went from bossy bully to sweet, but we were never no contact. It was never volatile. I
Okay.
stopped doing so much explaining.
Oh, I'm sure
Which,
that got tiring for you when you had to explain things to her all the time. But that's funny that you said that because I have a friend or someone I know that's close to me whose grandmother from her dad's side, her dad's mom, right,
yeah.
was mean to her growing up. Like loved her brother, like treated him totally different than her,
Oh, yeah.
right? But then when she got Alzheimer's, it flipped. Like
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
became the sweetest grandmother. She was like, where did my grandma go? Like this, I like it, but what happened? But
I
you
know.
said it though. It happens though. It's
It does happen.
right. Like when my uncle, before he passed away, he got Alzheimer's and he
Yeah.
became mean, towards his
Yeah. It
wife.
can happen that way too.
And he
Oh,
was the sweetest one of, uncles I knew. I mean, they were married for 40 plus years, but when he got there, they had to separate him because it would get so bad. And they had to
yeah.
put him in a home. And it's weird how the mind works, right? And you and I study this stuff, and that's how we try to help people to try to change the way they think so they can change behaviors. But certain
Yeah.
things we know there's no, you
You
can
just
try,
don't.
but that you just have, there's nothing that's going to help. It just, that's when I think like you have to take care of you and make sure that
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
healthy and that you stay, keep your mind going right and your body, your health, everything, so that you can
Yeah. Yeah.
deal with it. Luckily, I didn't have anyone. I mean, I had a sister who got Parkinson's, but
Mm.
not, it just got, as it got worse, she couldn't use, couldn't talk, had a hard time walking and stuff. So, but it's
Yeah.
like you, it's interesting. That's why I got into what I do and then went back to school and got my degree in psychology because I'm so fascinated how the mind works sometimes. And,
Some
because like,
some things are organic and other things are emotional. And
right,
yeah, but before then, we had a good long stretch. So I was in my early 30s. She was in her mid 80s. So we're talking, 40 years of and for her, I mean, I have to also say she had some psychotherapy, and she could have flashes of reflection, but she couldn't hold on to it.
right,
So I had to stop trying to appeal to her relationally and come from a place of power. I will do this. I have an hour to give you to, I don't know, to rearrange your furniture. Um, that kind of thing. When I stopped trying to convince her to be different, that's so hard, and it's an important flip for a daughter who wants to be obedient and the mom who's always been the boss, but really you're still stuck in a child role.
right,
So mom has personality disorder, particularly narcissism. They've got enough power, and they hear your relational pleas as weakness.
right,
They don't take you seriously. That took me so long to understand. It's part of the reason I wrote the book, so I could shorten the learning curve for these good daughters. It's like, here are the things, don't go down these rabbit trails, because they're just going to waste your time. So much wasted time.
right. But that's like, part of that in your case, right, was so it gave you what you needed for your book, because now you can, it sounds like, help women who are the good daughter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And that's, and I'm sure there's, women in my audience listening going, oh my god, she's telling my story, like I need to read, it's like, because this stuff fascinates me. But okay, we know kind of how the book came about, but how can this book help the women in the specifically that are saying, Katherine, I'm just like you. I'm going through the same thing. How can this help me? Talk about your book a little bit,
Okay.
Katherine.
Okay. Sure. If you go to my website, you can take a quiz that'll tell you if you're suffering from this good daughter syndrome. So that's probably the first place to start. If you resonate with any of this, and if you are, then yes, please go get the book. If you're not, and you can, I mean, the quiz will tell you it. There may be a result. You're lucky you have a good, healthy relationship with mom. So anyway, that's a place to start. So the book really talks about the psychology of what I call four traps. One being the never good enough trap, why you feel never good enough with moms like this. The second one is a guilt trap, why you feel responsible for mom's emotional well-being. The third one is a self-doubt trap. That's the internalized. We know we internalize attachment figures. That's a mom critic in your head. And the fourth one is the mixed message trap, which has more to do with shame, mixed messages, kind of learning how to decode those. So the first half of the book is about the traps. The second half of the book is about how to escape each trap.
Each trap, right? Because each one has its own beast, let's say, right?
Yeah, and some people are more feeling guilty is more of a problem, and then for some people, feeling never good enough. But most people will identify with at least three out of four, many times all four traps. And this probably like there's a lot of parallels really to working in substance abuse.
Right.
So enabling versus being compassionate.
Right.
It's like if so mom needs borderline or narcissistic supplies, right?
Right.
She needs to feel superior, needed, um, sometimes it's suffocating. They get so clingy. And so she's motivated to extract that out of the daughter if she doesn't have the emotional maturity that she should have.
Okay.
Okay. So mom's bids to get this is very, so the daughter has what I call unconscious contracts that her survival brain made because when you're little, you can't feed yourself. you
Right.
know, you're by definition emotionally more immature. And so you don't say, hey, I don't want this mom, give me another one. Can we have
Right.
another
Can
model?
I take her back for a refund, please? An
Yeah,
exchanger?
because I don't want to be codependent. I don't want to be a people pleaser. No, we don't think any of that. We
Right.
think I got to make this work. So we learn over time, if I'm quiet, mom's happier with me. If I don't cause any trouble, mom's happier with me.
Right.
If I bring home good grades and I have good, particularly for women, if I have good manners, mom's happy with me. I'm making mom look good. So that's why the over time, the relationship really gets molded to meet mom's needs. But that's why it's so important to understand initially. Again, I'll come back to the parallel with addiction. So if an alcoholic comes up to you and says, hey, I really need a beer, please get me a beer.
Right.
You're gonna say, oh, this is what you want, right? I'll get you a beer.
Right.
But if you're educated and you educate the enabler and they know about alcoholism, you can sure I'm preaching to the choir, of course,
Right.
because you know how this works. You can withhold the supply, the thing the person thinks is going to make them better.
Right.
So if it's mom, I need to be right. You need to do what I tell you to do. You say, no, mom, I need to make this decision for myself.
Right.
Or mom calls you up or fire texts you at work all day. This happens a lot. And you say, I really need to attend to my job during the day. Please don't text me or call me when I'm at work. That's a boundary.
Right.
So, on some level, you are denying what this person thinks that they want from you. They want that drink, they want that hit of whatever,
Right.
because it's going to make them in the short run feel better. But so I think the more you understand about the personality disorders, even if your mom doesn't have enough of the traits or the defenses to qualify for an actual personality disorder,
Right.
but that you're grounded somatically in your mind with your education. You know why you're saying no when you're saying no, that you're individuating, you're following a healthy trajectory, just like the codependent,
Right.
has, and it feels like crap to do
Right.
it at first. And you have to kind of hold on to this principle that over time, this is better, even if the person hits bottom. So mom finally, she can't get you to act right. She can't get you to do what she wants you to do.
Right.
So maybe she gets so upset, and maybe she finds somebody else who will, like my mother did. She'll find a husband.
Right. Well, that's just like the drug addict, right? If that one dealer's out, I'm going to go find another one, and I'm going to go after people until I get what I need from them. Right. And then when I'm done with them, it's on to the next person, and so on and so forth. And that's sad. But, I'm listening to you and I'm just thinking like, and it's tough growing up like that, right? Where, because then you, as the daughter, right? Let's just
Yeah.
say, the stress level has to be very high, right? From the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, because it's all about pleasing mom and making sure she's happy so that you're happy.
It's like your attention goes outside yourself and you lose touch with it's like if everybody makes mistakes, and if I need to be perfect to please my mother, then getting a B on a test, that's not good enough. But if I have like a normal, healthy mom, she's like, and she doesn't need me to make her look good, then well, maybe I'll study. If it's important to me, maybe I'll study and I make a good grade the next time. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
But yeah, when your attention is always on the other person, much like a codependent with an alcoholic rules the roost and everybody's kowtowing.
Right. Exactly.
I learned that early in practice. I had a ACOA, adult child of an alcoholic, and the family was convinced that if they cooked dad's steak just right, he wouldn't get drunk that night. These were intelligent people,
Right. But that's what that does to the family, right? Because that's why they call it a family disease, right? When,
Yes.
like for instance, part of me, when I would disappear and not expect mom to be upset because I haven't talked to her in 3 or 4 days and she has no idea where her son is. And I come back like, what's your problem, mom? And she's looking at me like I'm going to, like I'm going to kill you, it's
Yeah.
tough. Like you said, you got to understand, right? That's why I think it's important. And I'm so happy that you're here is, so you can explain like not only what you went through but how you can
Yeah.
heal as a good daughter and become autonomous and, like you said, individuate and be your own person and not have to worry about
Be your own person.
be every it's crazy because I'm sure in your lifetime, right, going to a friend's, your girlfriends or whatever, and you go, oh, we're hey, we're a lot alike because I know your mom's like my mom or whatever, right?
Uh, Well, 35 years of seeing clients, I got to see like a variation on a theme. So I knew my experience, and I knew my experience wasn't, like other family system problems. It like didn't look exactly the same. So I learned, so there would be maybe a mother who was so narcissistic, she was sociopathic.
Right.
Then that client would need to cut off all contact.
Right.
And it's like a horse of a different color, but there's shades that are similar. So I
Right.
got to see all these variations. And the book is very much, it's I don't know, it's probably has 5% me in it, but it's mostly what I've learned
What you've
from
learned. I love it.
seeing it played out
Right.
over and
That's like
over
it's
again.
like the alcoholic, right? There's different levels. There's the
Yeah.
weekend got
Yep.
the, the weekender, there's the binge drinker, right? Then there's, the extreme, like you said, where the guy or the woman, once they take a drink, cannot stop, unless God
Yeah.
comes down himself and says, I'm taking that away from you. This is, I love it. I'm learning a lot. And this is what I'm so blessed to have you here as a guest, because I'm not only have you as a guest, but I'm learning from you as well, like things to
Well, it's
work with.
not the male experience. I mean, and good for you for, reaching out and broadening what you're willing to listen to.
No, it's, but I think it's important to have guests on here that have not only can help us go through these types of challenges, but my audience knows it's like being an addict, right? Like a client knows, oh,
Yeah.
my counselor, he knows me because he's been there and done that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's what
Yeah.
I love. And
Yeah.
thank you for being so open and stuff like that. So, and sharing about your book. I'm going to ask you some of my questions that I love to ask. And we're going to
Ooh.
start with the fearless, right? What does fearless mean to you, Katherine? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis now today?
Hmm. Well, the thing that rings through my mind is the feel fear and do it anyway. So, I mean, I'll just be perfectly frank. Writing the book took uh, a lot because it's not a tell-all about my mother,
Right.
but it's self-revealing. And as anybody's written in anything and put it on Amazon, anybody can say anything, and you're gonna make somebody mad. So, but
Absolutely.
Clarissa Pincoli Estes says if you're not taking some heat for what you're doing, check yourself and see if you're really doing anything of note.
I love that.
So I had to pull back and say, what's more important to me? Not rocking the boat and never offending anybody ever, or kind of bringing this work into the world and kind of letting the chips fall where they may. Now, some people read it and they say, now I have a much better relationship with my mother, but it is definitely from the daughter's point of view. It's
Right.
advocacy for the good daughter.
Right.
So I get some hate mail too. Some mom, not a lot, but yeah, not just letting go of pleasing everybody.
But I agree, because I don't care what you do, right? Whether it's what you did in your book or in my book, there's always going to be someone that didn't like what you had to say, even though I didn't like specifically, and then there's that one bad review because they're pissed off at you. But
It
look
hits
at the
them the wrong.
courage it took for you to do that, because you're helping a lot of women out there that are going through this. And that's what matters. And I can tell that's, I'm sitting here with Katherine, everybody, and you can see it in her face. It's truly not like, oh, look at what I went through, but here's what I did go through, and here's how I want to help the women out there that are going through the same thing. So I love it. That's
Thank you. I don't want other people bumbling around in the dark,
exactly there. That's perfect analogy,
like
right?
running into furniture and bumbling
Stubbing
around.
their toes,
I
going, ah. I love
let
it.
me do it, and then I can give you a guide. It's still you guys still got to do the work, right?
Right. I
As
love it.
everybody has to do their own work, but have a guide or a path is that's been worn, well-worn path.
Well, it makes it easier, at least because in your head, at least in mine, I knew like
Yeah.
why meetings are there, right? You meet the people that have
Yeah.
gone before you, and they tell
Yeah.
you, yeah, it's going to be tough. It's not easy, but here, do what we did and you'll get what we have. And at first that didn't click. What do you mean? Do if you want what I have, do what I do. And I'm like, tell my son, what are you talking about? But now, as I stayed sober, I understood that. Right. And it's the same thing in your case, right? You're showing women, here's the path, right? You're still going to have to do the work, but I'm trying to least set you up for success so you know what to look for and stuff like that. And I love that. So that leads me to happiness. what does happiness, knowing I put a Y in it, mean to you? And how does that
Hmm.
show up in your life on a daily basis, Katherine?
Um, it's not money, it's not prestige, and I'm 65. So I'm, I'm an elder. It's squeezing each moment and trying to get joy, really recognizing the joy, but not trying to get it, but recognizing the joy and even trying to make meaning out of the struggle. Like just to have the faith it's all for a reason.
Right.
Everything is for my own good. It doesn't mean it's going to be pleasant. It's not doesn't mean that's going to go my way,
Right.
but trying to learn from each moment truly brings me happiness.
I love it. Right. Because when you can, no matter what you go through, and I'm no, you did, I have, when
Yeah.
I could change my perspective in those moments that were tough and find even in the tough moments, those things that I'm grateful for, it like changed my life, right? From being the poor me guy, people pleaser to I'm standing on my own 2 feet. And despite the challenges, I can always wake up in the morning and thank God for being there and putting me through that. So right?
Yeah.
Because as long as you learn a lesson that I think God wants us to learn, you're going to be
Yeah.
okay. Right. And it's going to make you stronger each and every step you take. So I appreciate that. Um, wow, this has been an amazing time, Katherine. Like I said, I appreciate being here. It's been an honor. But what I want to ask you now is if my audience, right, wants to get your book or get a hold of you and ask you questions or work with you, or they feel that you can help them, how do they get a hold of you?
If you remember the phrase, the good daughter syndrome. So if you just Google that, my book, my website is called Daughters Rising, Daughters Rising dot
Awesome.
info. But if you Google Daughters Rising, it's not .org, it's .info. You'll come upon my website, my books on it, coaching, online courses, ways to work with me.
I
And you can
love
get
it.
on my email list and get actually lots of free content. If you resonate, if this is your situation, um, it's it's not for everybody, of
Right.
course, nothing
Of course.
is. But if it's a big enough problem in your life and you're ready to do something about it, it's a really good place to start. It's a journey, awareness and then preparation for setting boundaries
Yeah.
and then the pushback that comes. So it's not an overnight, but it's such a worthwhile journey because our these original relationships set the template for so many things like people
Yeah.
pleasing, codependency.
Right.
If you have that with a parent, then you're going to replicate it unconsciously if you don't know about it and you don't dig into these issues. So I say digging in, particularly for women, to their mother-daughter issues pays off exponentially. You get dividends in all aspects
Right.
of your,
Because you get to break that cycle and be a different mom for your daughters.
and there's that too.
Right.
And having grown daughters, there's nothing that I don't recommend that I'm not willing to do myself.
I love it. I love it.
And I'm not perfect, but not by any means, but I see the value in repair with my
Yes.
daughters. I make missteps and then I come back and say, I realize that might have landed a certain way with you. Let's talk about it.
Right. And that's what I love about my 12 step program, right? I have that one step that allows me at the end of the day to say sorry if I did something wrong and make it right, but also to go, hey, you did pretty good today. So don't beat yourself up, And I
Uh-huh.
think, right,
Yeah.
like I definitely think those are God inspired steps and it's helped me, stay sober for over 21 years now.
That's wonderful. 21 years.
Yeah, but my biggest blessing is like being on this podcast with you today. Like I appreciate you being here and sharing your story and your book and
Thank
how
you.
you help women heal from good daughter syndrome. So I love it. Thank you so much for
You're
being
so,
here. But
thank
you're
you for,
not quite off the hook yet, just Katherine. I have one last question. It's my favorite question of all, and it goes like this. What is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
That's a really good question. To grow as human beings and become better people. To be yourself. And I don't mean in a selfish way, but to live your own path. That living somebody else's path for you is no way to live.
Love it.
And mother-daughters are my specialty. Living for your mother is no way to live.
Right.
Live for your, not in a selfish way, but follow your own path.
Which I think we all should do, whether we're, good
Right.
sons, good daughters, mothers, husbands, whatever. But I think that's what God, I think, put us on this earth for.
With
Right.
compassion in your heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. We help each other, but I don't have to be Catherine. Catherine doesn't have to be me. You know what I mean? So on and so forth. And that's what makes the world go round. And that's why we have such a good time. I have had such a good time with you today. I appreciate it.
Really have. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. So you heard, or everybody, you heard Catherine. If Catherine made you think, if she taught you something, if she made you smile, my famous, if she made you go, I like that. Please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. And again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this world. It's Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.